This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network, presented by Hearthside Bank.
All right, stop what you're doing. Thanks for clicking. This is an emergency fairness podcast, an emergency perspective podcast about Rick Barnes come tournament time. Now, I host a television show in Knoxville, Tennessee called The Sports Source. Most of you know that. We've been doing it for 20-something years. A couple of years ago, going into the NCAA tournament, we broke down just how bad Rick Barnes has been in NCAA tournaments. He's been a coach for 30-something years. He's made one Final Four. Worse than that, he's lost to lower seeds a number of times. He's lost to double-digit seeds a number of times. He hasn't, even when his teams have been seeded lower, he hasn't pulled many upsets. He just hasn't had a lot of success in the NCAA tournament when we did that show, and everyone knows it. We did it a couple of years ago. But since then, he's beaten Duke to make a Sweet 16. He's gotten to the Elite Eight last year, and that was a close game against Purdue. So it made me think, is it time to re-examine what Rick Barnes is doing at Tennessee? And what made me think about that? Well, I tell you what, let's take a look at that. Let's re-examine first. These are the top teams in the SEC in terms of NCAA tournament appearances since 2018. Now, I started at 2018 because Rick Barnes, that was his first NCAA tournament at Tennessee since he got here, and he's not missed it since. Now, the COVID year you can question, but the COVID year played the same for everyone, so there was no tournament. So the last 6 tournaments, he's been in 6 years. Alabama's been in 5, Kentucky 5, Auburn 5, Arkansas 3, Florida 4. Nobody else has been in more than that. You look at where these teams went out, okay? You see Alabama had a first-round exit. Auburn had 1, Florida had 1, Kentucky had 2. Tennessee first-round exits, 2021, they had 1. Second-round exits. Bruce Pearl and Auburn 3 times out in the second round. Florida out 3 times in the second round in the last 6 years. Tennessee, it's happened twice. 2 second-round exits for Tennessee. You look at the Sweet 16, Alabama's been to 2, been out in 2 is the way I should put it. Technically, you've been to more if you zoom through it, but this is where you were out. Alabama's been put out in the Sweet 16 twice, Arkansas once, Kentucky once, Tennessee has been put out in the Sweet 16 twice. All right, well, that's a bad looking 2, isn't it? My elementary school teachers would be upset with me. Elite 8, as I said, Tennessee went to Elite 8 last year. So when you're looking across the board at these top programs, only Alabama once made a Final Four. Only Auburn once made a Final Four. But you look at Auburn, for example, they cut off here. Tennessee's gone past that more times than Auburn has with their 1. And no one got further than a Final Four. Nobody made it to a championship game from the SEC. All right, so things have turned around a little bit. That's not bad. Six tournaments, and he's made all 6 of them, better than anyone else. He hasn't gotten the Final Four, but he's certainly done as well as pretty much everybody else on here, it would appear. And yet, last week on our show, we put up a poll question. And what we got were you had 3 options. How do you feel about this Tennessee team going into the tournament? Option 1, feel great. They got a killer defense. Option 3, feel awful. They got a sloppy offense. Everybody went with option 2, the winner. 57% said, meh, it's a Barnes team. As if nothing has changed with Rick Barnes. And look, the facts are the facts. Over 30 years, it hasn't been great. But when you look at things from a different perspective, sometimes they don't look as bad as they do at first. You're looking at a strawberry right now. Now, it doesn't look very delicious, does it? Zoomed in, you're focused on it, you're not seeing anything else. Looks pretty nasty. But when you zoom out, hey, look at that beautiful strawberry. With our teams, we tend to look only at their flaws. We don't care. We're not emotionally invested in other teams. We don't notice when they go out in the second round. We don't notice when they go out in the first round. We just know our guy's been going out in the first round and the second round. So let's talk about perspective. Is it time to look differently at Rick Barnes since he's had a good little run here in the last 6 years? Here's what you see. The NCAA tournament divvies up their cash to teams based on units. Every round you go to, that's another unit. So let's just use their units to decide who's done best in the SEC. And since 2018, those last 6 years, Alabama, best in the league. 14 units they've made based on the rounds they've gone to. Auburn 12, Arkansas and Kentucky 11, Florida 7. So how many units for Rick Barnes the worst tournament coach in the SEC? $15, which would put Tennessee right there, numero uno in the league. So in terms of Rick Barnes, the career tournament coach, not great, not great. Nothing's changed with that. The overall body of work, he's got his issues in the tournament. But of late, if you look around and you say, this guy stinks. Well, if he stinks, what's that say about the other teams in the tournament? Now, we didn't look at Texas and Oklahoma because they haven't been in the SEC. But when you look across the SEC and you widen out your view, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe the winning poll answer shouldn't be, it's a Barnes team. I'll change my tune. We'll update this again next month when the tournament's over. We'll have a look at it, and we'll figure out, have things changed? Has he gotten better again? Has Nate Oates zipped to another Final Four? Has Bruce Pearl gone to another Four? That'll change all this. But I just thought it might be time from someone who looked at all the bad years he's had in the tournament, might be time for someone like me to take a look and say, well, what about these last 6 years? Not too bad. And when you zoom out and compare it to the other SEC schools, Tennessee, top of the list. See you Sunday on the Sports Source.